I used to love the school nativity play as a kid. Even today I can remember being cast as some snivelling assistant to King Herod. It's arguably what started me on the creative path that I followed later in life. For better or for worse.
It's a weird setup, though. A bunch of children retelling the birth of Christ, often with comedic asides, pop culture references, and songs written by teachers. Nonetheless, the school nativity play is something that countless people are nostalgic over. And, as I'm sure we all know, when something is nostalgic for a lot of people, it's only a matter of time before it's given the big screen treatment.
4 times, as a matter of fact, with a stage show to sweeten the deal. But for the sake of this video, we're only going to be talking about the first 3. I already have more than enough to say, and I'd hate to ruin any goodwill I started this project with by going on for far too long. Like someone I know.
Nativity, or Nativity, released in 2009. The film stars Martin Freeman as Paul Maddens and Mark Wootton as Mr. Poppy. All 3 of the films we're looking at today were written and directed by Debbie Izzet, who also did some work on the film's music. This is shaping up to be a real renaissance project. The film made £6.4 million off a £1.85 million budget, so you'd be hard-pressed to call it a failure. That is, unless you delved into the critical consensus of the time, where scores ranged from middling to dreadful. Critics cited problems with its cliched nature, subpar comedy, and even went so far as to call the parents of the children involved exploitative. Is that too far, or is it a fair assessment? We'll have to dive in to find out. The film opens on our protagonist, Paul Maddens, narrating about days gone by, while we see him, his partner Jennifer, and his friend Gordon Shakespeare playing elves in a Christmas play. The 3 are malcontent with where their drama course has landed them, with Jennifer looking to direct or produce, and Paul yearning to teach. The others are kind of mean about it, which sets up what we can expect from the rest of the film. As Maddens' narration goes on, we hear about how Jennifer taught him to love Christmas, while we see their relationship start to deteriorate before she goes to America. Flash forward 5 years to a Christmas-hating Maddens leading a standard day at a school of rowdy children. This is intercut with Gordon, also a teacher, at some hoity-toity private school, which is far more orderly. You can see the sort of slobs versus snobs conflict the film is brewing. 2 things are quickly sprung on Maddens. Number 1, he is to direct this year's school nativity play, which he isn't happy with. He'd already directed one years before, to scathing reviews. The other surprise of the day is Maddens' new teaching assistant, the overgrown child Mr. Poppy. This man shouldn't be anywhere near children. I can't trust anyone who comes in with a radical guitar cover of Deck the Halls. Poppy and Maddens have to go and get a Christmas tree for the school. On the way, they talk about death slides.
This is very important, keep it in mind.
At the lot, they see Gordon, and Maddens finds himself lying that Jennifer will be coming to see his nativity to make it into a film.
And a book.
Mr. Poppy believes the lie, because of course he does, and tells everyone about it, because he is the worst. Maddens doesn't want to fess up, so everyone just sort of goes along with it. They hold auditions for the play, easily the film's most iconic sequence, and they're silent and awkward, and that's actually what makes them really fun. Of course, the 2 need to be in contact with Jennifer to make this lie a reality. So, Mr. Poppy hatches a plan to get Jennifer's number by telling her parents that her old dog blew up. I only really mentioned this scene for the implications of this line.
But to take a dog called Cracker, and then
to put explosives in it
and blow it apart like a cracker, I think common parlance is the pits.
Maddens and Poppy take the kids on school trips to see farm animals and also watch a baby being born. Why? Is the woman okay with this? If so, then why?
Why do the 2 grown men faint while this girl could not give a damn? It's so surreal. While auditioning for Joseph, one of the kids gets into a fight, but after giving a performance where he tries his best, is rewarded by a very genuine pep talk with Maddens. This is honestly my favourite scene, because it's just 2 people talking in an authentic way. And there is actually an inauthentic moment that I really admire shortly after. When the private school Oakmore tries to spy on the rehearsals, we have this really cute Edgar Wright-esque shot. All of these rehearsals would be for naught, however, if they can't get Hollywood to come and see the show. So they decide to film a demo reel, and since nothing will give you the edge in show business better than emotional blackmail, they decide to sprinkle a little bit of that in there. Maddens reads the children's letters to Santa and sees that they still had a little bit of that emotional blackmail left. he decides to finally be proactive in this situation and goes to LA himself to talk to Jennifer. Mr. Poppy meets him at the airport with 2 kids in tow, claiming that they'll help him sell the project. So the trio fly to California and break into a film studio, whilst back at home the class steals some animals? A crime wave has officially hit this movie. In America, Madden's finally reunites with Jennifer, and it's revealed that she's not a producer, she's just a secretary, and they're kicked off the lot. Jennifer tries to convince her boss to help Madden's out, but is quickly put down. The trio return to Britain, knowing that there's nothing to be done to hide the lie, and it's time for all to be revealed to the head teacher. Including the fact that those consent forms Mr. Poppy gave for the children were fake, and the duo officially kidnapped 2 children and took them to another country. This is naturally enough for the Nativity play to be cancelled. Both men lose their jobs, with Poppy's effective immediately, and the end of their quote-unquote friendship. So everyone is sad, and Mr. Maddens thinks back to rehearsals, how happy it made everyone, including himself, and decides he's gonna run the show anyway. Maddens apologizes for how he treated Poppy, and everyone gathers in the cathedral for the climax. The head teacher tries to put a stop to it, but the combination of an extremely horny mayor and not wanting to make a faux pas in front of all these parents forces her to buckle and allow the show to go on. And so we've finally made it to the show. How did it turn out? Pretty interesting, actually. I'm a big fan, but it's not a perfect run-through. The kids make mistakes and they aren't all great singers. I'm also really impressed with how different all of these songs are, with special mention to Gabriel's song. Not just because it's a culmination of Chekhov's Death Slide, but because it's a fun song. That being said, it does remind me a bit too much of the Rum Tum Tugger, which I never want to be reminded of. For the most part, the show is really cute. I like seeing the responses from the crowd. There's some really happy parents out there, and there's this one snowman guy who just kills me. Just look at him go. Party on, my dude. But of course, this wouldn't be Nativity without more unnecessary minor conflicts, as Gordon Shakespeare interrupts the play to tell the world about Madden's lies. But it's okay, because everything is saved through a Deus Ex helicopter, as Jennifer and her producer arrive just in time. Maddens and Jennifer have an emotional reunion, and just when you think that's it, the lighting technician, who is a child for some reason, shorts out the power. It doesn't matter though, because they just grab a buttload of candles for the final number, the power comes back on, everyone dances, which evokes a... But screw it, it's Christmas. At its core, Nativity is about the contrast between the world of the child and that of the adult. How the former sees joy and potential where the latter often only has space for cynicism. This is evident from the first scene of the film, where snide back and forths between the trio are relegated to the wings, whilst the audience of presumably children see happy, smiling faces dancing about. You can see this idea with the optimism of the children when contrasted against the broken dreams upon which the adults have built their lives. Jennifer's just a secretary, Maddens is alone and miserable, and even Gordon, whilst acting like he's above the rest of the world, has fallen into the same hole he warned his friend about in the first scene. Of course, the most obvious harbinger of this is the relationship between Mr. Poppy and Mr. Maddens. Poppy is a child in all but body, but Maddens can't simply dismiss him like he does his students. He has too much authority, being officially an adult. This makes Mr. Poppy an agent of change for Maddens, showing him that childhood isn't something lost with age, but rather something released that can be held again if you're willing. I have seen this film now a few times in my life, and while I wouldn't necessarily call it a good film, I'm comfortable saying I like it. It's a bit messy in parts. There are definitely changes that can make it a better film. There are things that are set up which never pay off. Some things do pay off, but forgot to set themselves up in the first place. Some of the jokes are groaners. I don't blame anyone for really disliking it, but it is incredibly charming. According to IMDb, most of the film was shot without a script, with most of the dialogue being improvised. In scenes like this, I think that really shows for the best. It feels natural, grounded, almost real. I like the fact that the kids get to act like real kids. You don't get to see this in enough films, if you ask me. There's also some heightened stuff that I really like. I didn't mention this in the synopsis, but Gordon making his nativity play a dark opera about King Herod icing a bunch of babies is just really funny. The same goes for this theatre critic played by Alan Carr, who inexplicably reviews primary school plays. It's a really fun idea that I can vibe with. I don't think it's perfect, but it definitely has qualities, and I think it deserves a watch. Plus, there's a lesson on pronouns. Maybe if some of you knew what these were, they wouldn't upset you so much. But if you're looking for something which can upset you after you know what it is, well, let's look no further than Nativity 2, Danger in the Manger. Nativity 2 sports a new star in David Tennant, fresh off his career-defining role as my favourite Doctor. That's right, I'm basic. The film had a significantly higher budget of £3 million, which shows in the film, and it even managed to make £10 million at the box office. The review scores were still subpar, worse than the originals, with one of the major problems being the overly long story, and that's not a bad way to describe it, honestly. Like the last one, this film starts with narration from the new protagonist, Donald Peterson. He's got a pregnant wife, a family he doesn't like, and a new job at St. Bernadette School. This is of course where we see the absolute state that Mr. Poppy has been making it. The kids are bold, brash, and unruly, and we see that no substitute teacher has been able to last in the class. This is also where we realize that Gordon Shakespeare is returning from the last film, even though his antagonism was kind of specific to Mr. Madden's, who isn't returning. It's through Gordon and one of the returning kids reading the newspaper that we hear about the stakes of the film. The schools want to enter a Song for Christmas competition in Castle Llawen in Wales. Now, all the kids naturally want to be part of this competition, so they decide to hold auditions. For some ill-explained reason, the auditions are held in secret, and for some well-explained reason, the auditions lack the charm of the last film, but more on that later. It's later revealed that the head has no plans to participate in the competition, but has arranged a trip to visit Santa as a consolation, which causes Mr. Poppy to burst into her office like a cop on the edge. On the class's way to visit Santa, they encounter Donald. Mr. Poppy bullies him for a bit and then gets the kids to jump him. When he gets to the sanctuary of the head's office, she tells him that if he can last through Christmas, she will make him head teacher in January.
He isn't in the next film, so I assume he quit within a week.
The kids all try to visit Santa, but are stopped by Oakmore students dressed as elves. They get past easily, and make a Christmas wish with Santa to win a Song for Christmas. When the kids return, they show Donald the song they've been working on, which isn't enough to convince him to sign off on the Song for Christmas competition. Mr. Poppy thinks the reason is the lack of a gimmick, and asks the kids to bring babies in tomorrow? When Donald goes home to rant about his job and how much he hates Mr. Poppy,
Which is something I do like 3 times a week, so...
it's revealed that Donald's twin brother Roderick will be attending the competition, meaning Donald wants absolutely nothing to do with it. Not that that matters much, because the next day Mr. Poppy and the kids kidnap, restrain, and rob him, on top of throwing his phone out of the window of an amphibious bus. Said bus draws so much attention that even Gordon notices it and hatches a little sabotage scheme. When his kids have to get off and pee, Gordon, with the help of this clearly primary school-aged boy, why do you ask, points the sign for the castle in the wrong direction. Shockingly, this only disrupts our heroes and no other commuters to this national competition. They tear away from the scene so fast they actually leave a little girl behind, who has to be picked up by Mr. Poppy and co. Naturally, the bus is led down the wrong way, and now with an extra head to worry about. Scratch that, an extra 2 heads. A hitherto unnoticed baby starts crying, and only Donald sees this for the upping of the stakes that it is. Mr. Poppy drives into a lake because he's finally lost it and has taken the whole class and a baby with him. Just kidding, it's an amphibious bus, the only damage done is to the film's budget. They manage to get to shore just in time for the bus to run out of fuel. They're going to have to walk the rest of the way, so for convenience sake they decide to let Donald roam free. Back at the school, parents have realised that their children have gone AWOL, and very calmly look to the head for answers.
Like, alarmingly calmly. This woman is missing her baby, and it's played like, if anything, an inconvenience.
It's decided that they'll make their own way to Castle Llawen and wait for them, perhaps even searching for them, if they must. Meanwhile, at the castle, Gordon arrives and notices he's missing a child. His solution to this catastrophic situation is just to pretend he isn't. To be fair, he was probably distracted by the other villain of the film, Roderick, also played by David Tennant. That's right, this Christmas movie has a multi-rolling lead, like all the best ones. I will say one thing for this scene. Roderick's introduction is the funniest moment in the film to me. Look at this. It's like I'm watching Kitchen Nightmares. Roderick and Gordon have a little rivalry going on since Roderick is famous and gets treated as such while Gordon is just some chump. It's not very interesting. As for the A-plot, they're just sort of wandering about the countryside, so I'm going to quickfire what they do get up to. Stealing a donkey, changing the baby, making the jokes you'd expect, miraculously finding boats with life jackets and helmets to fit everyone but the baby and the donkey, taking the boats down river even though the baby has no protection, falling in the river, having a panic attack, meeting up with the donkey, realizing this whole boat section was just a waste of time, going into a cave, talking about weird swimming trauma, singing a genuinely terrible song about not having a dad, calling loved ones without attempting to share any important information, arguing with Mr. Poppy, and finally deciding to dangle the kids off a cliff. That's not even a joke. The real climax of this film sees the 2 adults slowly lower each child down from the top of a cliff to the bottom. The tension rises as the last kid gets stuck halfway down and Donald has to save him. For some reason, they lowered this child after the donkey. Just thought I should add that. Donald's wife arrives just in time, and we have our second Deus Ex helicopter in as many films. They pick up the kid, and everyone rendezvous at the castle. We still have a whole competition to get through, but the actual plot is already wrapped up. Everything of note happens in Roderick's villainous turn. He steals the bridge from Gordon's song. He steals the baby, which is not very Christmassy if you ask me. And he even imprisons our heroes in the lamest trap ever. Look at this, they aren't even trying to get out. Gordon decides to help them out by wheeling them out onto the stage for a kind of bland song. The kids who came with the parents to find all of the missing people, for some reason sing about Jesus. It's kind of weird. Everyone is banned from the castle, and Donald's wife gives birth to twins in a barn. Family bonds are restored, and credits.
Nativity 2 is a worse film by basically every metric. The plot is so much more confused than the last film. The real climax comes at the side of the cliff when the stakes are at their highest. But then this leads the competition that the whole film was building towards to be kind of redundant.
If the film wanted to be about a class persevering through the woods, it should have ended there. If it wanted to be about a song competition, it shouldn't have had so much arsing about in the woods. Trying to be both satisfies no one. The film is even thematically quite odd, with its main theme being that of fatherhood. Donald is an expecting father. Guiding this class is a way of proving to the world that he can be a capable patriarch. I actually like that it's not about the outdated masculine idea of control. Donald can't challenge Mr. Poppy and win the respect of the children. He can only do that through acts of compassion. The child around whom the climax revolves hasn't spoken since his father leaves. By growing into the role of surrogate father, not just to him, but the whole class, the child finally manages to speak to Donald. On the other hand, Mr. Poppy's absent father is where the theme becomes oppressively orthodox, and I will say that was probably by accident. I think the idea was to state that even if you grow up without a nuclear family, you can still be capable and self-actualize. That would be a lovely point, provided Mr. Poppy wasn't the worst. He is the sort of person no self-respecting human would want their child to become. He's immature, he has no regard for the safety and well-being of others. He gaslights people around him and is incapable of being reasoned with. His charm from the first film is long gone. And that's the best way to summarize this film, really. The charm has run out. What was once a quaint little film about a quaint nativity play getting blown out of proportion by one man's lie has become almost hard to recognize. Gone are the little humanizing talks with the kids where they talk about their anxieties in meaningful ways. Gone are the elements which are a little bit silly but still incredibly plausible. Gone is the meaningful catharsis on the faces of parents when they see their child succeed. And what do we have in their stead? GoPro footage of kids being rowed down a river, a truckload of toilet humor, and more audition scenes than anyone asked for. Great job, everyone.
But what if we centered the next film around something that would instantly date it, and gave it a subtitle so dated that the target demographic wouldn't get the reference? Then I guess it's time for Nativity 3. Dude, where's my donkey?
I hadn't seen Nativity 3 before I started this video. I only knew that the film ditched David Tennant for Martin Clunes. And the first thing I noticed about it in my research was the sharp decline in reception. 16% on Rotten Tomatoes would place it at number 7 on the company's official worst Christmas movie list. Safe to say that critical reception wasn't kind to this one, with The Guardian calling it a John Lewis ad directed by Satan. In spite of this though, the film is actually the highest grossing of the trilogy, earning $11.3 million off a $2.8 million budget. Maybe the masses were right on this one. Or maybe people were rubbernecking this car crash. The film opens with, you guessed it, narration from not our protagonist, but his daughter, Lauren. She's writing a letter to Santa, wishing that her father, Jeremy Shepard, will marry his fiancée, Sophie. We get a flick through their relationship, and our villain is even established, Bradley Finch, the flash mobber. So we cut to Jeremy and Lauren buying a wedding ring in a shopping centre. And oh, Mr. Poppy is here. Great. So is Gordon. Cool. They're entering a flash mob competition where the victor gets to do a flash mob atop the Empire State Building when all of a sudden a flash mob breaks out in the shopping center. A very poorly shot and edited flash mob at that. Mr. Poppy heads back to the school to meet with the head and oh, she's gone. Replaced by a new, sterner leader. The two have a little argument before assembly starts. Mr. Poppy drags the donkey to said assembly, in case you've got the subtitle of the movie. It's announced that the school will be visited by an Ofsted inspector, with the power to close the school, as well as a so-called super teacher to help punch it into shape. Mr. Poppy recommends using flash mobs to save the school moments before he is finally fired. This whips the children up into a frenzy, protesting Mr. Poppy's departure as Jeremy and Lauren arrive at the school. Anticipating a super teacher, they hurry Jeremy into the building and allow him to get up to speed with the school. He steps in donkey poo on his way in and hastily makes a call to have the creature removed. Mr. Poppy does some unfunny deception. When trying to understand where the children are with their learning, Jeremy finds that these kids have been taught none of the curriculum. But he can't worry about that after he's distracted by the news that Sophie's ex will perform a flash mob at their wedding. Seeing him in distress, the children take Jeremy to see Mr. Poppy. Through some tortured circumstances, Jeremy is talked into doing flash mob auditions with Mr. Poppy the next day. They're facing the wrong way, which is supremely unhelpful for dance auditions, but it hits the quota. Auditions are cut short when the arrival of a man believed to be the Ofsted inspector causes a panic to hide the donkey in plain sight. The man passes the donkey, and the donkey is moved to other locations where it can be detected, and then it's revealed that the man is with animal control when Jeremy just flat out brings him the donkey. So he must be extremely bad at his job. They load the donkey onto the trailer and it kicks Jeremy in the head. The credits play with no music. When he wakes, he has no memory of who he or anyone around him is. Mr. Poppy cares not for the serious injury sustained and tries to intimidate Shepard to no avail, on top of telling him that he's the man's boss. They take him to a doctor that performs the bare minimum and writes it off as psychological damage, so the gang decide to surround Jeremy with Christmas until he starts getting his memory back. Lauren tries to remind him of her deceased mother, and they make a wish on the fairy dust she left behind. The kids start singing. It's weird. A plan is made to let Shepard relive his youth by taking him back to the model village in the town where he grew up. They steal a train to get there, but that's not important. At the model village, no memories come back to Jeremy, but the kids have a contingency plan. They do a flash mob. A flash mob with a shockingly subpar song coupled with very lazy choreography and led by a girl who is way too old to be in this school. It feels like it was strung together in an afternoon, which in context fits, but it doesn't really excuse it. They go into a church and the gang are shocked to learn that the man who remembers basically nothing doesn't remember our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So they tell him the good news, and Poppy's intentions rear their ugly head. He's only interested in getting back the donkey he stole in the last film. They sing the titular song, Dude, Where's My Donkey? It's not good, and actually quite intimidating. I wouldn't want this sung at me in a dark alley, or in a terrible movie that I was watching. They then try to recreate the moment he proposed to Sophie. They flash mob him again. There are so many flash mobs in this film. I'm not going to get in depth with any until they're particularly awful. They go to a theme park. It isn't fun to watch. Then venture off to meet Santa. This sequence is insane. There are these 3 minimum wage elf actors who freak out at the sight of the group and then try to gatekeep the kids from Santa with a mix of jokes and riddles. It's like something out of a weird European fairy tale. Then they start getting mildly threatening towards Shepard. Why can't the film just be about them? I like these guys. Our heroes do manage to push past the elves and reach Santa, but this causes Jeremy to have a massive crisis. He starts wrecking Santa's workshop and gets chased by all my favorite characters. He steals one of their vehicles and has a completely pointless chase scene in it. The film tries to make Mr. Poppy the voice of reason for all of 10 seconds. I scoff, the film warps to London, and a change of scenery this drastic can only mean one thing. It's time for more flash mobs. A whole competition of them, in fact. They have their own little gimmicks. One even has Gordon, remember him? The flash mob of our heroes is easily the one with the least spectacle, and since spectacle is all a flash mob is, it's no surprise they lose the contest. But that's okay. They meet the winners at the airport and do yet another flash mob to steal their plane tickets. This would be a 10-minute movie if you removed all the flash mobs and crimes. Oh god, I stopped caring. They go to New York, meet up with Sophie, tell her nothing about what happened for some reason. They try to give the couple a moment to ignite Shepard's memories. It doesn't work. Bradley convinces Jeremy that his fiancée doesn't love him anymore. He doesn't talk to her about it and instead waives his parental responsibilities to her and tells her to marry Bradley. Her parents and loved ones do a flash mob telling her to marry Bradley. It's revealed that Jeremy was never a super teacher, but the Ofsted inspector this whole time. And this is considered just as immoral as Mr. Poppy's lies throughout the film that he was the headmaster. It's not. Jeremy takes a walk around New York, Mr. Poppy and Lauren look for him. Jeremy gets his memories back thanks to literal magic and reunites with Lauren. The three decide to storm the wedding. Mr. Poppy finds time to get dressed like a pig even though they were hurrying to the wedding. They flash mob the wedding. It really feels like a song being written on the spot. The two lovers get married. The end. Not really though! The donkey, now on a different continent, enters the church and they do a flash mob atop the Empire State Building. It's the best scene in the film. Just look at that green screen. Multiple characters just teleport here from thousands of miles away. They get a real-life donkey to do real-life dancing. Just look at him go. Gordon shows up to try and get the cast arrested, but instead just dances a merry jig. What is this film? I'll tell you what it is. A calamitous breakdown of screenwriting. So much happens in this film with no real rhyme or reason. Events just happen. Characters just act without any word to the audience of why. It's almost like all of the connective tissue in this film has been removed to make more space for hijinks. It makes for a fascinating watch for the shambles it is, but so difficult to describe. It's almost too fitting that one of the major concepts the film works with is obfuscation. Characters in this film are aware that they don't know something, and don't even know how to get the information they desire. Sophie knows something's wrong with Jeremy, but she has no idea because nobody will just tell her what's going on. Jeremy knows that he's lost his memories, but every attempt at regaining them fails. The only way he can get them back is with an inexplicable moment of blind faith. All he has to do is believe. There's a character I didn't even mention, this hotel worker. He starts as a standard foil, but off-screen changes into this strange guardian angel type character. We don't see much development. It's more like he changes gears in one scene. It's a result of bad writing, but the effect is things happening where the audience can't see. The title of the film is derived from what Mr. Poppy yearns to know. Where is the donkey? No one knows. No one's even sure how they can find out. Then, when the donkey just shows up at the end of the film, we never learn what happened to him. The film seeks to hide the truth from the viewer, and in doing so hides that human element that made the first film so special. We don't know what most of these kids think or what their insecurities are, because the film doesn't want us to know.
The Nativity Trilogy is an odd duck, with its best film being barely above average and its worst being completely inept. They were all box office successes, but none of them really contributed to the culture of the time. They more so piggybacked off it.
That being said, I wouldn't condemn the franchise. I stand by my belief that the first film is worth seeing. Even the third film is bad enough to be fun. The second one isn't either. I can't enjoy that one at all.
But that's not important. Not really. Celebrating Christmas isn't about finding films to enjoy. It's about enjoying them or not enjoying them or taking the mick out of them with the people that you love. So, put something on. Good or bad, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure you're doing it with the people that are most important to you.